In my opinion, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is one of the best video game movies ever made. Some people don't like it that much, but most of the time their criticisms are fair. Matt Walsh, his criticisms are not fair. Just letting you all know, I am not a political channel, but his channel is very political. Luckily, I'm not talking about politics, I'm just talking about his trash-ass opinion on Sonic 3. And also, what does he mean it broke him as a father?
When a man becomes a father, he's called upon to make sacrifices for his family. And often these will be small sacrifices. Sometimes they'll be larger, though, more significant. And on even rarer occasion, the duties of fatherhood will require him to make the kind of sacrifice that, up to that moment, he would have thought himself incapable of making. These are the moments when a man must become a hero, and when he must lay his very life on the line. Perhaps he's rushing into a burning building to rescue his child from the fire. Perhaps he has to pull his loved one away from the path of a speeding train because they've been tied to the tracks by bandits or whatever. Or most harrowing of all, he may be compelled by his paternal obligations to go to a movie theater and watch Sonic the Hedgehog 3.
Seems kind of weird that he's comparing watching a movie with his kids that they want to see with him to saving his kids from certain death. What?
Now, a man in that situation would, of course, much prefer to be engulfed in flames or hit by a speeding train, but that would be the coward's way out. He endures Sonic the Hedgehog 3 for the sake of his children, whom he loves. And over Christmas break, that is precisely the situation that I found myself in.
He then gives a bunch of examples about how he had a bunch of fun with his family over the holidays, which, no matter which side of the political spectrum you're on or what your opinions are on Matt Walsh, I'm happy that he was able to have a good holiday with his family. I'm never gonna hope that someone's Christmas is terrible, because that's just, dickish.
These were all wonderful experiences, yet things took a rather distressing turn on the final Thursday of the break when my 8-year-old son and 5-year-old daughter asked me to take them to go see Sonic the Hedgehog 3. And I did. God help me. God help me. I did. Now, before I offer my brief review of this thing that I hesitate to call a film, I must first acknowledge, in all fairness, I never saw Sonic the Hedgehog 1 or Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It's possible that one cannot fully appreciate the narrative complexities of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 without having seen the first 2 chapters in this epic Hedgehog saga. Maybe the other 2 movies are works of staggering artistic genius that would elevate the 3rd installment and lend it the sort of context necessary for me to have appreciated it and enjoyed it, instead of feeling like I was being waterboarded with high fructose corn syrup the whole time. But I doubt it.
Of course you're going to be confused if you're watching the 3rd movie before seeing the first 2. Imagine watching Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, without watching Fellowship of the Ring and The Two Towers. Still a fantastic movie, it's just you're not getting the full picture. You're not getting the full story. You're literally watching the final chapter of an epic saga. The 3 Sonic movies obviously aren't as good as the Lord of the Ring movies, but still, same concept applies.
I mean, this is the kind of movie where Jim Carrey plays 2 characters. One is the evil villain, and the other is the evil villain's evil grandfather in old age makeup. And the 2 break into an impromptu dance routine that makes no narrative sense, but lasts approximately 87 minutes.
The scene was 1, meant to be funny, and 2, meant to show the similarities between the 2. Later on, it is revealed that Gerald was tricking Robotnik into making him help him, but it shows how similar both of them are and how in sync they are. It also kind of shows how much they trust each other at this point and how willing they are to work together with each other.
It's the kind of movie where those same characters before the dance routine actually look directly into the camera and explain that they're being played by the same actor. I must assume, and I think assume safely, that there is nothing in the other 2 films that would make this one any less obnoxious or horrifically stupid.
These movies are consistently goofy, Jim Carrey is consistently goofy, and also each of the 3 movies has a dance scene. So even if you think it's obnoxious, it is consistent throughout the series.
I'm not going to bother explaining the plot of this film in any detail. I wasn't tracking it that closely, to be honest. I was mostly fighting to stay awake.
Hey, pal. You just blowing from Stupid Town?
This is the kind of movie that bores you to the point of putting you to sleep, but also annoys you at the same time. It's kind of an odd combination to be both sleepy and deeply irritated simultaneously.
Yeah, the story's terrible because you literally weren't paying attention.
As for the plot, I can only tell you that Sonic is the good hedgehog, which you may know. There's also an evil hedgehog voiced by Keanu Reeves, who, and I like Keanu Reeves, by the way, but like every other voice actor in this film and most voice actors in most children's films that have been made for the past 20 years, he has no talent as a voice actor and doesn't understand how to act with just your voice.
What in the fuck are you talking about? Keanu Reeves' voice acting wasn't that good in the Shadow DLC, but that's also just because he was probably given poor voice direction. His voice acting in the movie is actually phenomenal. Also, he did an exceptionally good job as Johnny Silverhand, and all of the other voice actors in this movie are great as well. Ben Schwartz, Idris Elba, and Colleen O'Shaughnessy, who has been Tails in the games for years.
So Sonic has to stop the evil hedgehog and his evil cohorts, that's the Jim Carrey dancing duo I mentioned earlier, from blowing up the world with a big laser. And this has been the evil plan of every evil villain in every blockbuster franchise film for the past 3 decades. It's a formula that this movie is not interested in deviating from. This is not the sort of movie that deviates from formulas. Now, if you're wondering why the evil hedgehog and the 2 Jim Carreys want to explode the world and murder 8 billion people in a cosmic blast that they will also die in, it's because the older Jim Carrey's granddaughter, I think, was killed, and now he wants to commit murder-suicide because life isn't worth living.
You literally did not pay attention at all, it seems. Eggman thinks that him and his grandfather are gonna rule the world, but Gerald actually wants to blow up the world along with himself because he thinks humanity is a failed experiment. He's pissed off at humanity for killing his granddaughter and for locking him up just to make him a slave to make machines. He went kind of fucking crazy, and so to him this is the ultimate revenge. And he's manipulating Shadow into believing that this is right. This is the right thing to do. This is what Maria would have wanted.
Like, that's real. That's in the movie. He actually declares his suicidal intention as well. Now, if that seems like weirdly bleak and dark for a kid's movie where the characters bust out impromptu dance routines and randomly break the fourth wall and constantly speak in internet lingo from 2019, there's a lot of that, by the way. Just as one example, at one point, Jim Carrey says, "Damn you, autocorrect." If it seems weirdly bleak and dark for that kind of movie, it's because it is.
Autocorrect is still bending me over and fucking me like a roast pig till this day. And lots of kids or family movies have dark themes in them. Later in this review, he brings up how great of a movie The Iron Giant is, which it is a great movie, but the Iron Giant literally has to sacrifice himself with the bomb to keep it from killing everyone else.
This is a movie, like so many kids' movies these days, that schizophrenically darts back and forth from being ironic to painfully self-serious to goofy to earnest, and so on and so on. It doesn't try to smooth over these tonal transitions with good writing or performances. The writing is just terrible, and the performances are atrocious across the board.
You're not really giving any great examples on how the writing is atrocious. You're just saying that it's bleak and that's bad, or that there's funny parts and dark parts. And the parts that you say are poorly written aren't really that they're poorly written, it's just that you didn't pay attention and you literally misunderstood them. And the parts that you say are poorly written, you're describing entirely wrong. Also, all of the performances are bad. All of the acting in this movie is really good, especially Keanu Reeves' Shadow. And a lot of people are saying that Dr. Eggman is one of Jim Carrey's best roles.
Because this movie, again, like so many kids' movies these days, is not the fulfillment of anyone's creative vision. It is just the product of a corporate algorithm.
I'm kind of retarded.
Yeah, this film definitely wasn't an artistic vision of all the people that worked on it, or the director, Jeff Fowler, who worked on some of the previous Sonic games. A huge Sonic fan who wants to bring these characters to the big screen. Someone who cares a lot about this series and wants the mainstream audience to know about it. Keanu Reeves was definitely picked to be Shadow because he's a popular actor and that's it. It definitely had nothing to do with him being the most requested fan cast of any of these characters. If this really was corporate slop, they wouldn't have brought back Tails' actual video game voice actress to voice him in the movies. If this really was corporate slop, they would not be adapting two of the best Sonic games ever made, but I get it. It's corporate slop because you didn't like it. It's not allowed to be artistic and made with a lot of heart and soul if you don't like it. Why the fuck are you making sense?
It is loud and ugly and obnoxious and disjointed because nobody who made the film actually cared about making a good film. And they have absolutely no respect for their audience.
Didn't care about their audience. Didn't care about their fucking audience. If they didn't care about their goddamn audience, they wouldn't have changed this roadkill-ass design when we told them to. If these movies were truly corporate, they would have told us to fuck off and would have kept this ugly-ass blue rat.
I mean, this movie could have been made by AI. We are at a point. If they start making movies with AI, we would not know the difference because they've effectively been doing that for 20 years now.
Now that's just fucking disrespectful to everyone who worked on this movie.
You might respond that, well, this movie isn't for me. It's for kids. Well, first of all, tell that to the other people in the theater with us. Just adults, no kids. Whole groups of them who bought tickets to Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Also, tell it to the multiple grown adults who got angry at me on Twitter for not liking the movie. The funny thing is that a lot of those same people say, well, it's not for you, it's for kids. Why are you getting so upset about it then? Why are you tearfully defending a movie that you claim is not for you either?
Okay, look, when it comes to kids' movies or family movies, it's gonna be dumbed down at least a little bit so that the younger people in the audience can understand it better. Now that I think about it, it's really fucking funny that it was dumbed down for kids and you still couldn't understand it. I've taken shits that were smarter than you. And I know that there's some people who are like, oh, it's a kids' movie, who cares if it's bad? And one thing I do agree with this guy on is that, yes, kids' movies should have a bunch of love and care put into them as much as normal movies. And I honestly think that they did put a bunch of love and care into Sonic 3. Not only are they adapting what is considered the best Sonic story, they also managed to explain grief to kids extremely well. In a format meant for kids and families, they managed to tell you what it's like to live with grief. And it tells you that you shouldn't change who you are because of grief. This film is going to let a lot of children know that it's okay to have trauma, and when a loved one dies, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt really, really bad. And so yes, I do think a lot of care was put into this kids movie. And I don't really care if you didn't like the movie, it's just your opinion on it is so terrible. This is by far the worst review I've ever seen of this movie. Your criticisms aren't genuine, your points aren't valid. You even admitted that you didn't even pay attention to the movie, yet you still want to give this much of an opinion on it. And yes, we should admit whenever kids' movies aren't that good. That way, hopefully, kids' movies that are good will be made. That way we don't have to keep shoveling them slop. The reason we get a lot of bad things is because we don't speak up, and they're not able to hear our criticisms. You can't just write it off as, it's a bad movie, but that's okay because it's a kids' movie. Which, I know that's not what you're saying, but that's what a lot of other people say. I got kind of sidetracked, but I feel like I had to mention that as well.
In fact, one person told me that my negative comments had upset, and I'm repeating this phrase verbatim, had upset the, quote, Sonic community. Now, those are not kids who identify themselves as members of the Sonic community. My 8-year-old loves Sonic, but he's not on Twitter furiously defending the Sonic community from its detractors.
I will be the first to admit that a lot of the Sonic fan base is bad, and even the good parts can get pretty fucking stinky as well. So yes, a lot of those people you shouldn't listen to, because they're just gross. But another reason people are complaining about your review is that none of the points are valid. You're not making any sense. You're reviewing a movie you didn't even really watch. People aren't mad that you disliked the movie. They're mad because your reasons are so stupid.
It is possible to make a children's movie that, although it's for children, is still a good, high-quality piece of art. I don't hate children's movies just because they're for children. Quite the opposite. As a father of 6, I've watched many, many children's movies. Okay, I've watched way more than the average person because I have so many kids. And I greatly appreciate the good ones. A few nights ago, just as an example, we watched the movie Iron Giant with my kids, and that's an animated children's film. It's also well-written, beautifully illustrated, brilliantly performed, tonally consistent. It's funny and heartwarming, and At points, it's sad, but it works all of that in a way that feels natural to the story. It's a children's film, and it's also a great film.
But everyone will die unless the Iron Giant blows himself up with a rocket in space. Isn't that fucking bleak? You framed being bleak as a problem for Sonic 3, so how come it's suddenly not a problem for this movie?
Because as it turns out, children's movies are not just for children. They're for parents too. Or at least they should be. Okay, if a kid's movie or kid's show is so grating and so dumb and so unpleasant that parents can't stand to be in the same room while it's on, that doesn't mean it's for kids. It isn't for kids. It isn't for anyone. It's just bad.
I don't know, man. I could definitely think of some more slop that would be unbearable to be in the same room with.
And the fact that people say, well, of course it's bad, it's for kids, tells you everything you need to know about our culture. They act like it's ridiculous to expect the content produced for kids to be high quality or to have any artistic merit whatsoever. But I tend to think exactly the opposite. I think content produced for kids should especially be high quality and should especially have artistic merit.
That is by far the smartest thing I've heard this whole video.
Which is why I hated Sonic the Hedgehog 3.
And you fucking lost me. The most kind of valid point he had is that it's very inconsistent with its tone, but I don't think that it's inconsistent. It manages to switch tones very easily, and it doesn't feel distracting or grating. The serious moments lead into the funny moments perfectly. His entire misunderstanding about the dichotomy between these three villains, and also saying that all of the acting in this movie was terrible, like, dude, you clearly did not see the same movie. Along with the story's bad because I didn't pay attention to it. If he would have actually had valid criticisms of the movie and why he didn't like it, I wouldn't have made this video. But this was genuinely one of the worst reviews for a movie I have ever seen, and I just had to talk about it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the bell icon, consider joining my Patreon for just $1 a month, and I hope everyone else liked the Sonic 3 movie. Review coming soon, y'all have a good night. Also, I'm really surprised he didn't call Eggman and Stone woke, because, like, just look at them.